Wow, look at that for a sharp pencil. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to zoom right in and we're going to work on this section here. So over here we've got some tiny little hairs. So sharp that it breaks, but never mind. Okay, and we've got some tiny little bits in here. When I'm doing little hairs like this, don't make them all exactly the same direction in strokes like that. Don't forget the hairs sort of move. They swoop and they move and they bend and they curl. Okay. So now that I've done that, I now need to sort of perhaps go back in slightly negatively, as in filling in some of the bits either side, just so we've got a few darker bits on the in-betweeny bits, if that makes sense. Couple little hairs there. Let's look where we're at with that. And then go back over some of these lines that I've already done, because they sort of bubbled over the surface. They weren't very impressive to start with, so you may need to go over them a couple of times. Sort of press firmly but not too firmly. I'm just going back over the lines I've already made. And then obviously we've got some in here. And then I'm just going to use a couple of little dots and dashes just for this top section, which isn't quite as bright. I know Daddy's back home, isn't he? No. Okay, so we've got this this area here, which is actually sort of more white than we're actually showing at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a grey, and you can choose the grey that you use. This is the 720 by Carbothello, which is quite a warm grey actually. And I just want to sort of get the general feeling around here to be sort of more grey than the dark that we've got at the moment. And now that I've sort of given it a base colour, I'm now just going to pop a couple more independent hairs in here, so they're not being blended. These will be the actual, hopefully anyway, tiny little hairs. It's such a small space, it is difficult to get it exact, but we do our very best. Okay, and then do a bit of negative painting again, not everywhere because I still want some of that grey to show through, just on a couple of little areas, just to make a little bit of difference between the white and grey. And then I might just use the black. So this is just the black and the white that I've been using in addition to that. Just using it on its side just to sort of tone it down a bit. So it's kind of going over those little hairs that we've done and just sort of tucking the tone back in really. Getting a little bit of And then with the black also, just sort of, we've done a couple of little white dotty bits, but again, just sort of going back in with the black in this sort of area is going to help. And actually, we've got a couple of really quite black areas just in there and underneath here. So I might just give that, obviously where a bit of white's been flying around, it can just lose some of its intensity again. Just pop that back in. So tiny little adjustments just to get it right. Let's move on to the top of the nose now. Now, because I've got this in hand, this little grey that I was using, the 720, this it does actually come up with some quite nice light little hairs. So I'm just going to pop a few just at the top of the nose here. Not too many, just a suggestion. And then just in there. Okay, so the same thing really. So that was put in with the grey. I'm going to just pop a couple of little sort of slightly more determined hairs in. The snoring is Rosie, if you can hear her. Just over here like that, like this. And then again, coming back in between those little hairs that you've created. And just filling in the gaps a little bit. And you might want to put a couple of little darker bits in here as well that you can see. Okay, so same again on this side. A little bit of grey, sort of really quite grey, this section here. This whole section in there. And then I think for here, I'm just going to sharpen my white pencil. And we're just going to do a few sort of definitive hairs here, very, very lightly touching the surface. Constantly looking at my reference. We know there's some really quite light. I pressed a bit too hard there. So we know that this area here is really light. We need a couple of standout hairs. And then we need to put a couple just in here. So just a few more standalone hairs. Got to remember this whole area is supposed to be white. It's also supposed to sort of have some little bits of grey, and it's lighter anyway rather than white. Not really any such thing as white. Just pop a few in here. Now, because this area here is supposed to be a little bit darker, I'm just going to go over it with the black. I did try and go over it with the grey there, but actually that was going to be too light. So I'm just sort of glazing over. So you put the white, the lighter colours in there, and then just give it a good glaze. And then while I've got this black in my hand, this is the 190 black, obviously. 199, I mean. Just going to do in between some of these. Got a little line that sort of comes in there. Okay, that's starting to look about right. The other thing that I might do is use the grey, the 230. This is a light bluey grey, and that might look quite nice in there. So I'm just popping that in there and in there. Just a couple of little places in there. Also be great for on here, so we'll probably keep that to one side. Okay. A little bit of light coming through there as well. Do I need any under here? We've got sort of like a couple little dotty bits here as well. Okay. So I'm thinking that looks okay at the moment. I might just give it a little bit of a glaze with the black, just to knock it back, particularly here. We've got it, it's a little bit darker here. So let's just glaze that back with the black. Okay. And then with our super punchy black, just going to pop a bit more black in there. There we go, that's made a bit of a difference, hasn't it? And just in there. Okay. So there's a line that I've done here, obviously to get some super punchiness in, but it's a little bit stark, and there's never really a line that exists like that on its own. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very gently pop over a couple of little hairs that sit over the top of it, so it doesn't look quite so much like a line. And if you look closely at the reference, you'll see that that is the case anyway. And then let's have a look. So this is just with the grey with the 230. Experiment with different greys. You know, getting a nice variety is always going to help you. Just doing a couple of little dotty bits in there. And again, going back in the in-betweeny bits. Just in here. Okay. So that might be something that we sort of tweak at some stage, but I'm quite happy with that at the moment. Let's just push that in a bit, maybe just push that back in a bit. Definitely push some bits through here, and then maybe just settle these lighter bits down. They're sort of sitting on the surface a little bit too much. Okay, let's do the nose. So I'm going to do the shiny bit on the nose. I can still very faintly see some grid lines in there, so we're going to sort of work on those areas a little bit as well. I'm going to use the 181, which is a Payne's Grey. I'm not sure if I've used that so far. But Payne's Grey is a great colour because it's basically a black, but it's a real bluey black. And if you have a look at the reference, you'll see that the nose, particularly on this sort of shiny bit of the nose, there's a lot of blue in there. So that little bit of blue that's in the Payne's grey will just kind of sit there and help it look even more realistic. So I'm giving it a good coating because obviously we've got some grid lines there that we want to go over, and also it is a nice sort of shiny area. There's not that many hairs on there either, so we're giving it a little bit of a base layer there. So on top I'm going to use my sort of proper normal black, which is the 199. You can see the difference there between let's just see if you can see what I can. It's just to get you a little bit closer to what I'm doing. So I'm just doing those tiny little sort of lines through that Payne's grey there. We know we've got this in here. And we just do some little dots and dashes in here, not too many, but just so we're showing that we know that there's a little bit of hair on here. A bit of hair as it kind of extends up here as well. A few random flakes. Okay. So the next thing I will do is use one of my greys, either the 720 or the 230 would be absolutely fine here. I mean, there's not much difference between the two. So I'm just going to go for the slightly harder one, which is the 230. Just do a couple of little dots around the main dots that I've put in. And if there are any very, very slight sort of grid lines, you can always dot either side of them, and then it kind of helps merge them in. You can't really see them at this stage here. Just a couple of little sort of dotty bits. And then either side of this as well, just sort of creating a little bit more. And then what I might do is just go into my reference photo and edit that. Edit the exposure. So at the moment, so just so I can actually see what the nose looks like when it's really exposed up. And that is a useful tip actually, so that you can kind of put a little bit more detail. So if you expose it right up, let's move along so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, let's just, right. Okay, so we've got a bit more information now to play with. So we know that the nose kind of comes down here and then here. So that's the nostril there. Let's have a think about this actually. Right, so got the sort of line that goes through the nose there. We know that this is. So looking at the exposed reference photo, you can see that the shape sort of comes like this. Obviously this is still dark here and we don't want to sort of get it overexposed because it will look wrong. But we just want to sort of show that we can see that there's some shape there. It's not just one big sort of dark blob. So just a little bit on there. And then there's sort of that section there. And then there's some in there. I'm just going to add a little bit more pressure now to some of these nice little highlights on the nose. Okay, and and it might be that we have to sort of knock that back a little bit because obviously in the real photographs, I mean, I've done that exposure up to 100, but in the real photograph, as I say, it's like that. So it was just to sort of give a hint of that we sort of know roughly what's going on there. So just using the black now just to pop that in. Okay. Yep, I think that's fine. And I'm just, while I've got the black, just making some little marks just in there. Okay, so let's have a look now at this section to the side. There's some really lovely browns going on in there. So I'm just going to, we've obviously got the dark in, but when you look at the sides of the face, they're not quite as black as like the nostrils and the really dark bits that we've done everywhere else. So let's just zoom you in a little bit to what I'm doing here. And I'm just putting the 177 that we kind of used in the eyes. I'm just putting a few little hints of that, just because there is a very, very warm colour in there. And then I'm going to come back in with the 230, the little 230 Faber Castel. I'll write all of this in the materials, obviously. Just because it's quite a nice sharp one, and all I want is tiny, tiny little hairy bits. So a couple here, a couple here. So just a few little dots and dashes. See, we've got some just to give it a bit of flavour. And we've got a bit more going on here. You don't want to go over it so much that it then doesn't look like a black muzzle. It's a very fine line. I'm just going to go back in again with my black, knock it back a little bit. A couple of little black bits in between the nice little light bit that we've got around the nose there. Okay, let's do the same again the other side. So let's put some of that nice 177 brown in, just to create a bit of richness, a bit of warmth. And then tiny, tiny, pressing very, very lightly at this stage. Around here. Okay, so that was the 230. So then I'm just going back in again with the black in between some of the little hairs that I've done, just to show a bit of difference. Also got quite a nice dark bit just up here. A little bit of darkness there as well. And let's look at this little mouth. some cute little... I'm going to put these in because we need to have them in, but we're going to need to knock them back because they're going to be too light. So we create the shapes and then we glaze them into the colour that we actually want. So I'm just going back over that there with the black. Right, so let's put a bit of context in. We want to try and finish this off. So I've gone back to my little squares, and obviously we'd already started putting some sort of darker bits in here. But let's just finish it off a little bit. And then we've got sort of like a line that comes under there. Let's put some... So there's like a shadow on this bit. There's a shadow sort of comes to there. So let's pop that in. Just in putting it in black because it's the very, very first layer. And we're going to colour it back in the colour that it actually should be. And then we've kind of got a line that sort of comes along there. Okay. And this is just going to fill his little cheeks out. Make him look even cuter. So actually this sort of comes out a little bit there. And then in these squares we've got some, just looking for some of the shady bits that are going on. Because this is sort of such an early stage, you know, you can get away with using a little bit of black with the white. So that's kind of where we're going to. And then, so I'm just plotting in really at this stage. Because I'm looking at it, I'm just trying to sort of work out where everything is, to be honest with you. So I'm just looking at that little corner there, and we know that there's a couple of little black hairs that go in there, and it sort of comes right out to here. Obviously, the really dark stuff goes to there, but there are just a couple of little shady dark bits there. Okay. And then this is all really, when you look at it, this is all really quite light, right the way on the side of this face. So I'm going to just give it a really good sort of coating throughout. So that we can kind of keep it nice and crisp. And then obviously we know we've got some there. And we know that on this square here, there's a bit of grey going on where it's sort of set back from the eye. The eye comes in front. So I'm just going to use any grey just for a moment. This is the 720. Just popping a little bit of grey in here, just showing that we know this area is not quite as dark, as bright as here or here. And I might just give it a very faint coating with the black, using the black on its side, just like I'm going to under the chin, just to show that this is going to be sort of a shady area, and then we'll work our little lights on top. While I've got the black in my hand, we know that this section here is really quite dark. Got little light hairs on top, but we can pop those in a minute. But we're just getting an overall feeling now. Want to try and get rid of these sort of grid lines where we can. Got a few that come in here, and then let's bring that down so you can see. That's what we're doing at the top here. I'm just using the black on its side just to put a little bit of context at the top here. Okay, just got a couple of little sort of slightly darker hairs. I just want to be a little bit more distinct in there. This is all about just getting a bit of information. Now this left hand side is a little bit sort of grayer in tone again. So I'm looking at using the 230 just on its side. Also just trying to cover these lines really as well. I'm going to use a bit of black just to pop some little hairs in there. And we're going to be doing this with a little bit more finesse in a minute. These are some of like the little in-betweeny bits. And you do have to just sort of get some coverage. Okay, I'm going to bring that back up to here. And then we've got a few sort of, that's that there while I've got the dark in my hand. So my idea for sort of doing all of this now is that I will then get my little cotton bud and sort of give it a little scrub all over. So I may as well get all of the information in. And it sort of comes here. This is really sort of dark under here. Let's see, where do we want to go? Let's zoom into this square again. Okay. Let's pop some white in because obviously we've got lots of strands of white going in there. So this is just going to be a base layer. You know, we're going to be doing details on top. So it's just about filling in the tooth, getting a lot of information down, getting, you know, enough coverage, covering your little grid lines. I have actually gone too hard with my grid lines, so I think I said at the beginning, just go a little bit careful with them. And then we've got, and if you do have some that you have to sort of cover over, you can just use a few well-positioned white lines. Okay. Okay, and then we've got some in there. Right, now I think we need to give it a bit of a blend. So I have run out of, or I haven't got to hand my little paper stems, cotton buds. So I'm going to use this soft fit tool. You can pick these up from Amazon, or you can get the branded ones as well. They're very, very useful. And they act sort of, they are similar. You can use makeup, eyeshadow applicators, anything really, just to sort of get those colours really mixing together. Okay. The only difference is it's easier to clean with a paper, a cotton bud. You can take a little bit of fluff off of the cotton buds at the tip, whereas it's a little bit more difficult with this one. So I'm kind of going to use it, but it is going to, probably should have gone in initially just with the black, just because otherwise it can make the black quite milky. But you know, we can add things on top. can't we? We can make it how we want to be. Okay, and then we know that this side is really quite light, so I'm just going to blend those bits there, blend these bits here and here. And I'm going to save these a bit more. I'm going to use my Caran Chinese white here, just to really get some pigment in. And cover those lines as well. Just looking back at my squares again. It's obviously where I've gone over these. I do, even though the left hand side isn't quite as light as the right hand side, it still does have some nice light hairs. And of course the Caran has a lot of pigment in it. So when you do have some lines that you want to get over, the Caran are your friends, because there's a lot of pigment in them, as is this nice black that we've got from Cretacolour as well. I love all materials. I think they've all got benefits. So this is the Cretacolour in there. I'm just creating a base layer. You know, you can do this with soft pastels. Some of my other tutorials will be demoing using soft pastels, pan pastels, and so on. I do like to work with pastel pencils though, because I do find that they give you sort of much more sort of control over the overall sort of image with it. So but you know, but both are effective, and it depends on the size that you're drawing as well. For these extra dark areas, I'm just going to use my little finger to sort of smudge it into place, because I really don't want it mixing with too much of the white on these really dark bits. And then use a fresh finger, so not that one, that one. And I'm just going to sort of press this in. It's still quite wobbly and it needs a little bit of detailing up, but it just sort of presses it in a little bit. And again here. And there we go, so ready to do some details on top with the fur. Okay, so before I do any more, let's just push that a little bit further. So before I do the main details for this sort of area here, I'm just going to pop some brown in, because in between the tiny little furs here, there's quite a lot of warmth. So I want to get it looking just a little bit warmer than it is at the moment, particularly this sort of area here. So I'm using the 180, which we've used before. And I just want to sort of get like a little base layer of warmth. I know that we're not doing a full portrait, but I do like to sort of finish what I'm doing as well as possible. Okay, and then now with a really super sharp white pencil, I'm going to start doing some really sort of detailed lines for these little hairs. And being really careful to look at the direction that these little furs are supposed to go in. Let's pop these in here. So really nice sort of gentle pressure, but gentle but fairly firm. But certainly not sort of pushing it so that you're in danger of breaking the pencils. And some of the marks you've already made before, you can just sort of go over. And then as they come in to the eye, make sure that they're kind of like really sort of feeding into that darker area. Make a few little random strokes. Here we just need a little bit more brightness. It's a little bit too dull, so I might kind of, now that I've got all of those sort of definite hairs in, I've got that little bit of warmth behind, I might just try giving it sort of a glaze with the white, just to get a sort of an overall slightly lighter effect, while still keeping some of those nice little hairs that we had. And it really is a case of being quite patient with it and building it up. Got some fresh paper stumps here, so I'm just going to push those in a little bit and keep turning it so that we're not constantly mixing colours at this stage. And then obviously, because I've just blended, I've lost a bit of the intensity. I can still see lots of texture there, so that's great. But now we just need to get some even more like tiny little lines on top. I'm going to use my Caran Dash white here for this, just to sort of really punch in some definite. I'm going to go over the same lines that I made before. So you're intensifying those, but you're leaving some little spaces in between to show the tiny little spaces in between hairs. And it's just giving it that sort of little sharp white, bright white that we're looking for. Particularly in sort of areas like down here. And we'll have a couple here as well. This is quite nice and light. And let's have a little look. We've lost a few of our little dots and dashes here. It's looking a bit darker than it should. Always tweaking. Tiny little bits. Refining. Got a couple of little dots and stuff there. A little bit of light there as well, which actually adds to the expression that he's giving us, which is quite cute. Just going to even out that nose a bit, it's annoying me. And again here, got a couple, just because I've got this in my hand, I look for other areas where perhaps we're sort of lacking in highlights. And then we can kind of, I think we're more or less done up here. Just a couple. Pushing these little hairs up and over. which is where they belong. Okay. And then coming across to this section, you know, we really do need quite lots of sort of light, because it really is sort of fat, fluffy, and very, very white in this section here. So it's got, I mean, it's not totally white. It's got a little bit of warmth. In fact, actually, this section here, just coming out, just going back to my 180 again, a little bit. We've just got a little bit of warmth just in here, not too much. A little bit of warmth just to the right hand side of the mouth there. Let's just pop a little bit in between some of the hairs, and then again tiny little bit just at the top of the eye here. Just adds a bit of interest as well. But other than that, we're going to go for quite nice and bright. And we're going to get this area here nice and bright, and then we're going to have to flick some little black hairs over. And we've got a few little bits of white as they come in there. So now's time to use a little paper stump, I think. Using just the sort of like the transitional areas here. This is a transitional sort of area, and then using a slightly fresh part of it, pushing that into the tooth. Yeah, it was just sitting on top, which is no good to anyone. Certainly not if you want to get the sort of like the fine details on top. Once you've got that nice base, then you can start to do all the little details. Let's work in. I'm just using the slightly harder Faber Castel, just to make a few definitive lines there. See, I was going a bit too hard there. You want to make them slightly random, slightly crossing over each other. Pay close attention to areas that you don't want to be too white. And then in here. We got some, that's the sort of the little tiny little bit of light there. I've got some coming in here as well. So that's looking quite nice. I might just give a little press in areas. So again, you know, obviously to start with, because we still had a lot of Pastelmat to play with, we were really scrubbing it in with the cotton bud. But at this stage, we kind of want our lines to stay where we initially put them. So I'm just using this to press it in. Okay. Then we've lost a little bit of definition here. There's a tiny little sort of shadowy bit that comes right down to the muzzle. So I've just gone for my Payne's Grey at this stage, because I don't want it too black. I don't want everything sort of just black. Payne's Grey is a really dark colour, so it just sort of adds that little bit of shading in there. And then going back to a little bit of white that we've got coming this side of it, and then through here. And you can see that all those lovely layers that we put on, they're all adding lots of lovely texture. And then we're going to want some more this side as well. up here. This is knocked back a little bit, this area, because it's sitting behind the eye. So it's going to be, I will use the little scrubber in this instance, because we do want that part of the eye to sit back so that the main dark bit sort of comes over the top. Probably go back over that again actually with, let's see what we've got. We can use a 230, which is just a, basically looks white, but it's just slightly off white. It's actually a grey, but it's just gives it a little bit of lightness there. Okay, and then let's just do some, I'm going to just sharpen this. Just trying to get these lines nice and sort of fine. They'll fall off in a minute when I pick the piece up. Just doing some top level lines here. And also going to use the 180 just at the top here. We did initially do that, but we've also done some dark. So I'm just going to pop in a couple of little 180 sort of warm browny bits just at the top here. And then we'll go back to using that little grey because it's not quite as light. That's because obviously there are tiny little flecks of light within that fur. To go right up to the grid line there, let's be professional about it. And then flicking the little lighter hairs up and over. Always look for where, you know, which hairs sit on top of which hairs. So we know that these little light hairs sit in front of and up and over the top of the sort of darker hairs behind. So make sure you're sort of factoring that in. And in the same way around this eye here, we're going to just intensify the black in a minute, because the black hairs sit on top of the other ones. Okay, I've just moved back to my white now just to create a little bit more light around the eye. We do really want to make it look quite distinctive around those eyes. I mean, those eyes are beautiful, aren't they? They're really full of character, and you really do want them to sort of stand out. So, got some there, and these right here really stand out as well. And then you've got a couple just come over here. You know, it is only a practice piece, so you don't, you know, but it's a really good practice. You've got lots in here. We've covered eyes, muzzle, and, you know, sort of techniques for fur. Going to, just like I did the other side, just lost some of the shading around here, so I'm using the Payne's grey because it's actually quite a dark colour, but it's not sort of true black. There's quite a lot of blue in it, so I'm just going to bring that out and in there as well. Payne's grey in there. Anywhere else? I think actually we could do with just a few more tiny little light hairs to sort of move in there. Payne's grey in here. Just looking for the tiny little sort of changes. And now where's our black? So I think we need to do some sort of determined hairs. when you look at them, they're really quite nice and separated. So we'll do that. We've done that one before. Let's just give it a bit more intensity. And likewise here, we've done this one, but we've probably gone over with white. Just a couple of little flicks as well. Let's have a look, see what we've got this side. Not too many this side, but just do a couple because it just has the effect of you seeing that the black hairs sit over the white hairs here, and that again helps with the whole 3D effect. If there's ever an opportunity to pop you know, one sort of strong colour in front of the other to make the other one sit behind, always utilise it. Accentuated if necessary. Let's get a little bit of just around that in there. Okay. And then I'm just going to use the black now just in here just to get a little bit more depth and coverage here. We know that we've got sort of a bit of brown and white here. Just I'm going to finish it off to the edge really. That was the 180. I'm just coming back in with the grey. I don't need a particularly sharp or particularly bright, just need a little bit of dotting just around here because just this section right to the side, and also we do need to sort of go over these grid lines as well. Okay. Fresh one of these, and let's just really keep blending. I can still see that it's getting a bit bobbly, so we haven't quite utilised all the Pastelmat here. And of course, by giving it a little bit of a scrub around these lines, just helps move the line a little bit as well. You can still see it quite strongly here, but we'll do some more little hairs over the top. I just did some what I thought was videoing and wasn't. So just literally using using the white and the black, so it's making the black sit on top of the white, and using some little sort of whites in this area, and then kind of glazing it back over with a slightly darker colour. This is just the 230, so this is a grey now. So I'm just trying to sort of get that right balance here, just in this bottom corner, because we want it darker than the rest of it. We want these nice white hairs to sit on top, but we also want to give it a little bit of a boost. Okay, I think that's not looking too bad. Let's. I think this just needs tucking in a little bit here. It is constantly a process of doing something, looking at it, adjusting it. And while I've got the white in my hand, I'm just going to fluff this line out here so that we've not got any hint of the grid lines at the end, hopefully. Okay, that's not looking too bad, not looking too shabby. Right, so now we're going to have a look at this section, basically these two squares here. I'm not going off the squares anymore, I'm just going to go off the photograph. But the whole section really, from where this light bit is here to this shadow here. So we've got those sort of earmarked really, and it kind of comes to about there. So this whole area is actually sort of like a dark grey colour because it's in shadow. So I think I might initially just give it sort of a once over with the Payne's grey. You can see that's coming out really quite dark. This is the 181. We'll get it looking grey in a minute, but we just want to sort of deepen it. The area underneath an animal's chin, any animal's chin, any person's chin, actually you need to get it quite dark in order for the face to really look 3D. So sometimes I do actually darken them perhaps even more than strictly necessary, just to create that depth. It really does help. I'm just going to intensify this little area here, and then that's so this actually lips out, doesn't it? So the little muzzle area just lips out just a little bit there. Just in there. In some of the darker areas, I'm just going to do a couple little dark bits right under there. That's not sort of everywhere. Okay, and then let's have a look. One of the greys that we were using before was the 720. Let's have a little look at using that. This is still base layer. We're going to be mixing it in a minute. But this is just to sort of give us a bit of an idea of, the fur isn't particularly well defined here because it's tucked right under the chin. So you're just getting an idea of how it looks. So probably do something like that. And again, sort of pay a little bit of attention over your grid lines. Okay, that now needs to be darker again. So I'm going to go back over with the 181 and sort of give it a once over with that. Just while I've got them here, let's just do a couple of little bits in between the hairs there. So at the moment, if you have a look at what I've got down there, if you can sort of really analyse it, you can see that the tone is not too dissimilar. This tone here is not too dissimilar to this tone here. So we kind of need to keep working at it to make sure there's enough distinction, otherwise they look like they're on the same level. So at the moment, I'm just going to concentrate on blending it in. And then it might be that we need to do something like, get this area darker. There's a nice little sort of dark patch here. Perhaps we needed to get that a little bit darker, just so it looks like there's a difference. And certainly need that to be dark up here as well. Just want it to be quite striking, the difference. And already, if you without doing anything to this bottom section, already that looks, the nose is coming forward by showing that little bit of depth. And then I think just bringing that nose down a little bit as well is going to help. Okay, so then let's try some little. So I've just got a little grey. Let's just try doing a few little greys. Only problem with a warm grey like this, so this is the 704. It really is quite warm, and that can look a little bit dirty. So let's swap it to a sort of to the 720, which is a cooler grey. We don't want it too light though, so let's just really have a look at some of these little hairs. There's almost like the sort of squiggle. You really can't sort of see them that well. So that was the 720. So now I'm going to just go back in again. Actually, no, let's go back in with the Payne's grey and give a little bit of love and attention with that. So sort of this is a mix between glazing it and actually using it. You know, using the Payne's grey. It's sort of not really lifting off the page, off the paper. Just pushing that in there. We need something a little bit darker just under here, just right under the chin to show. Okay. Yep, that's having a bit more of an effect. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is that this area here needs to sit underneath the nice little light hairs that we've got going on here. So we need to sort of push some depth into and under here. At the same time, this is the 230. Okay, so this hair here, so this is the 230, which is a sort of a bluey grey. Just doing some definitive little hairs, and you know, if you do little things like this little line here, it's just the line of the mouth. But if you show that, you're then putting the chin forwards from the hair that's sitting underneath it. Just adjusting the lighting a bit there. Okay. So putting some of these in here, and then putting some of these just over. Again, whiskers really helpful. A couple of little lighter whiskers, but you have got some darker ones in here as well. So if we pop a couple of dark ones in there, you know, you're just trying to make something look 3D. And this needs to be really sharp. This muzzle here is so dark and sharp against that lovely white that it's not really done it justice there. You know, the sharper something appears, the more it will sort of come forwards. Okay, so that's just a little bit more distinct, that line. And again there. So this is just the ordinary black that I'm using. Just a little bit more determined. I think this could just do with widening out its little muzzle actually. And then a couple of little dots where we know that the bottom of the nose goes. I'm going to take a bit of a liberty there and put a bit of shading in. There we go. And a couple there. So the other way of making this look like it's still really inside the underneath the chin is to also sort of pay attention to the areas that are just alongside it. So here we've got a really sort of dark area where it's the sort of the folds of the skin. So, and really go over your grid lines here as well. Just doing a few there. This is just the pure black that I'm using. Just a sort of darker little bits in there. I'm pretty sure that's sort of got a few browny bits in as well. Let's just go over that because obviously that's a mistake that I made. But this bit under here as well, it's not It's not totally black, but it is a sort of a bit more shady. So let's do that, and then just mix a little bit of this 180 in with there as well. And then I'm going to use the warm grey that I was just using then, before 704, where I said it can make things look a little bit dirty. But that's probably quite a nice colour to sort of just mix in there just for now, which is the 704. I'm just really going over grid lines and stuff as well. Just popping a couple of little bits just in there, and then you can go back in with your sort of cooler greys, cooler lighter greys. I've got some little squiggly bits just in there. So I'm going to give that a blend, and then we're going to do the sort of the top level little details after that. So you've got quite a bit of pigment in there, but again I was using that to sort of try and get rid of the grid lines. And so if I was doing a commission using a grid, I would have made the lines a lot softer. So just a bit of tidying up now with my white pencil. I call it a bit of quiet time with my white pencil. And just see a few little areas here that just need brightening in between, where there's just you've got a couple of little mucky areas. Just want to push a bit of lightness back in. A bit firmer with it. Tiny little ones in there. We know this is nice and light, this section here, but perhaps we've ignored a couple of little lights that we've got going on there. Little dotty bits there. This is really sort of final tweaking bits really, and then obviously you want to come back into this section that we were doing before, so I'm really sort of mixing up the little hairs here, going in different directions, curving. We want to make sure that this area here is really nice and light. Everything else sits really back from that. The light that was coming in from the window was sort of skewing the colours a little bit. So so here, just underneath, obviously we want this section here to be really nice and light. And these here to be quite sort of determined and light. And then we'll just put a couple of little light bits in here, because it is light fur even though it's in shadow. If we need to blend it in, we will. This isn't actually sort of dark black fur, it's just greyer fur underneath. Just a couple of little dotty bits around there. Just making random little marks now, just under there, just to sort of indicate the fur. I think actually we need to do a few more bits of fur here as well. And then maybe there is a just a final little few little strokes in there. Might just give that another blend. To really get a nice smooth area to sort of create some little lights on top. Just dabbing that rather than mixing it too much. A lot of white and a lot of black in there, and a Payne's grey. Okay, we're nearly there. And then some little tiny little lights there. Really making these quite sort of firm and determined, so that it really sort of emphasises the point that this is in front. Let's give that a little line through there. And then we've got just little bits there. Let's just do okay. Just going to knock the in-betweeny bits in this area just with the black, just to make a little bit more distinction in here. Being careful not to go over that nice little whisker that I've made. And then tiny little adjustments. This is the side of the muzzle. So I've put it in with the white. I'm just going to knock that back with a Payne's grey. It just shows a little bit of tonal difference for the side of the muzzle, like that. And I have gone a bit rogue with some of these. They're a little bit long on here, so I'm just going to temper them off with the Payne's grey, knock them back a bit. Can't leave him alone now. Keep doing some more bits. Okay, so there's that, and then Rosie's having a dream. The little muzzle comes through here. Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Had a nice walk this morning. Loved it. Okay. I'm going to use my 230 because it's got a little bit more definition. I'm just going to pop a couple of little hairs just in there. See, these are all just very minor, tiny little changes, but they will all help you. Will help this muzzle to look like it's sitting on top of the underneath of the chin and so on. Makes it look like it's got a goatee now. I think I might, as much as I think that's actually quite cute, just going to glaze that back in with a Payne's grey, just so it looks like a hair that's sitting underneath the chin instead, because it was making it look too much like a goatee. And then just a couple of little hairs just in in there as well.
I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have learnt lots from it. You know, we've covered sort of the very difficult aspect of having black hairs with white hairs and so on. Yeah, hopefully you've learnt lots. I mean, they're really super bright eyes. There aren't that many animals with such vivid eyes. I'm just going in with the black. I can't help but tweak while I'm talking. So I'm just going in with a little bit of black there just to give it a little bit of definition. But, you know, it really does make for sort of quite a striking portrait. And just doing a couple of little sort of tweaks in there as well, just to sort of add a bit of shading. But other than that, and a little bit, you'll find on all my tutorials I say, right, that's it, that's done, great. And then I come on video and there's some more being done. I'm just using the black at the moment just to make this area even darker. That's in there. So I might actually, for this section here, it's where it's sort of coming out, just use a slightly warmer grey. So it's the 704 again, just in here. I do like to finish it off properly. Okay, and I don't think that's just a shadow. It's not dark, it's not black hair. I created that little sort of darker area, but it's not black fur. Let's give a little scrubberoony. Okay. And let's bring those hairs back in just with the white. Tiny little hairs so that we can see these hairs. This is like a little fold area there. And these sort of sit on top, and then this area here is darker. So that makes sense. But we do need to kind of feed a few, we need there to be a sort of a good transition between the sort of the slightly lighter hairs here and as they go in towards fur. Might try a little bit of Payne's grey again here, just to sort of get that blue come under the chin, whilst still making it look like it is fur. So I'm going to use a slightly bluey colour, which is the 230 is a cooler colour. Just a couple of little dots and dashes here and there, just to show a bit of texture. I know I fuss. Okay, and then there is actually just a little bit of light through there. Just going to finish off these edges just with a little bit of grey. The 230 just was had it in my hand, just so that it doesn't look too unfinished at the edges. And again, this is, you know, down to you if you're just using it as a practice piece. That's fine. It could be quite a nice little standalone piece, actually. You don't have to do the whole of an animal, you know, it can just be part of it. You know, it's the most important part is his little stare, the way he's looking at you. And I don't know why, but a lot of my animals at the moment are looking quite grumpy. I don't know what that says about me, because I'm not actually a very grumpy person. I'm actually pretty chipper. I blame my husband, he's pretty grumpy. And just tiny little bit of line that I saw there. And in here as well, just finishing it off nicely. And actually do have a few little, might just put some white actually, just this part here not really given much attention to, and this is actually quite nice and light, so let's just get that nice and light there, really pushing quite hard there. Couple of little light bits, let's do a little bit
of light as it's hitting the sides there. And let's fluff this out a bit, shall we? I want him to look like he's got fluffy cheeks. So one tiny, I'm actually really happy with him so far, apart from the fact that he's quite grumpy. Just one tiny little thing that I'd like to do is just using the 177, which is a dark brown. Just bringing this pupil out a little bit, just so it's in line with what we've got going on the other eye. That's a bit better, that's a little bit more even then. And actually there's a little dot there that I'm not quite happy with. That's quite black there. I might cover that over with some red. And it's kind of sort of mixing in. And same again here. Same red that we used before. Okay. I don't know that. I don't like that dot very much. Let's get a little bit of white over it. And then once I've got the white over it, let's go back over it with an orange. Just so it sort of blends in. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So yeah, really happy with him. Cute little boy. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it doesn't look exactly like the reference photo. He's got softer, slightly more gentle, slightly less grumpy eyes than I've given him, but that's your personality comes in, or somebody else's personality does, and and that's half the fun of what we do, is that you don't want just a sort of a straight copy. What I've seen when I've looked into that photograph, I've seen the sort of like the angles of these eyes and the angles of the eyebrows, and I've obviously accentuated them. Some of it's subconscious, but that's kind of what makes it a piece of art rather than just copying a photograph. Just tweaking bits again. So yeah, I think he's got certainly quite grumpy, but yeah, very pleased with him. Hope you've enjoyed the lesson, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. I better stop now, hadn't I? I don't know, I'm always seeing things. This is like encore, 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 isn't it? This little part of the muzzle, so I'm just doing this. I've not got the reference photo in front of me, but I just feel like that needs filling out a little bit there, just to make it slightly more rounded. That's better. That was just using a Payne's Grey 181. Right, I really am finished.